Welcome to the World News on the Papyrus Global TV. First, the headlines. Gambian authorities halt 780 migrants in large sea interception, yet aid effort collapses as militants target workers in Eastern DRC. Sudanese government reclaimed Khartoum after 3 years of war. Ethiopia launches work on Africa's largest ever airport. Kampala braces for Museveni's 7th term bid amid high-stake vote. China blocks Western pressure on Tanzania following contested vote. South Africa's ANC launches sweeping reform plan to regain voters' trust ahead of local polls. Now in the news in details. In one of the largest maritime enforcement action in recent months, Gambian authorities intercepted approximately 780 migrants attempting to make the perilous journey to Europe. The operation, which took place over several days and was confirmed on Saturday, January 10, 2026, involved the Gambian Navy and police units patrolling the Atlantic coastline. The migrants were found aboard several overcrowded wooden vessels, commonly known as piragos, which were deemed unseaworthy and lacked sufficient safety equipment for high-sea voyage towards the Canary Islands. The intercepted individuals, many of whom were young men and women from the Gambia and neighboring West African nations, have been taken to proceeding centers for identification and medical assessment. Gambian officials noted that the surge in attempting departure is likely driven by economic deterioration and influence of human trafficking network. In response to incident, the government has vowed to intensify coastal surveillance and work more closely with international partners to dismantle smuggling rings that profit from these dangerous crossings, while also calling for more sustainable local economic opportunities to discourage the irregular migration paths. The security situation in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo has taken a dire turn as humanitarian organizations report a sharp increase in targeted attacks against aid workers. As of Monday, January 12, 2026, several international NGOs have been forced to suspend operations in North Kivu and Ituri, Providence, following a series of ambushes, kidnapping, and the looting of aid convoys. This attack, attributed to various armed groups operating in the region, have left thousands of displaced persons without access to critical food, clean water, and medical supplies. The United Nations and various relief agencies have issued an urgent appeal to the Congolese government and the international community to provide better security guarantees for those on front lines of the crisis. Humanitarian coordinators emphasize that aid workers are being increasingly targeted as soft targets by groups seeking to extort resources or send political messages. The suspension of aid comes at a catastrophic time as the region faces a resurgence of preventable diseases and a growing hunger crisis fueled by the ongoing displacement of millions of civilians. Without immediate intervention to protect the humanitarian corridor, officials warn that the death toll from the lack of aid that could soon surpass that of the direct conflicts. The Sudanese government officials began its return to the capital, Khartoum, on Monday, January 12, 2026, making a symbolic and administrative turning point nearly 2 years after devastating civil war broke out. Following a sustained period of operating from the coastal city of Port Sudan, high-ranking officials and civil servants have started re-establishing their presence in the capital's administrative quarters. The move followed a series of strategic military gain and local ceasefire agreements that have secured key districts allowing for a cautious restoration of state functions in the city that serve as the primary battleground of the conflict. The return is being managed in phases, with the government prioritizing restoration of essential services like water, electricity, and telecommunications, which were largely decimated during the fighting. While the atmosphere in Khartoum remains tense and many neighborhoods still lies in ruin, the presence of the central government is viewed by some as a necessary step towards national recovery and the eventual delivery of humanitarian aid on a large scale. However, international observers warn that the security situation remains fragile as pockets of resistance continue to persist on outskirts of the city, requiring a dedicated balance between construction and ongoing military vigilance. Construction has officially commenced in Ethiopia on what is set to become Africa's largest airport, a massive infrastructure project located near the town of Bishoftu, south of Addis Ababa. The project, which broke ground on Sunday, January 11, 2026, is designed to eventually handle over 100 million passengers annually, signaling dwarfing the capacity of the current Bole International Airport. This ambitious development is a cornerstone of Ethiopia's long-term strategy to cement its position as the premier aviation and logistic hub for the entire continent. Financing for the multi-billion-dollar endeavor involves in a mixed state funding and international partnership, reflecting Ethiopia's continued focus on large-scale industrialization despite regional economic headwind. Once completed, the airport is expected to redefine air travel in Africa, providing the infrastructure necessary to compete with the world's major global transit hubs.
We will now go on a short break, and when we come back, the news will continue. Stay tuned.
The Papyrus Global, we don't just cover events, we create cinematic experiences. From red carpets to birthdays, gala dinners, and your fairy tale weddings, we bring your moments to life with high-tech precision. Our gadgets are smarter, our lenses sharper, and our team simply world-class. Trust the Papyrus Global to tell your story in the boldest, brightest way possible.
Welcome back, and now the news will continue.
The streets of Kampala were transformed into a sea of yellow on Sunday, January 11, 2026, as the ruling National Resistance Movement, NRM, blanketed the capital in its official color ahead of upcoming presidential elections. From the central business district to the outskirts, massive billboards, fluttering banners, and posters of President Yoweri Museveni has been erected, signaling the ruling party's overwhelming presence in a city that has historically been an opposition stronghold. The visual display follows a series of large-scale rallies where NRM supporters marched through the streets, chanting slogans and touting the government's record on regional stability and infrastructure development. While the ruling party maintains that the decoration reflects the genuine enthusiasm of the electorate, opposition figures have criticized the move, alleging that the state is using public resources to drown out alternative voices. Despite these complaints, the atmosphere in the capital remained a vibrant, if tense, competition of political messaging as both sides mark their final appeal to the city's influential youth and business community. The Chinese government has issued a formal warning against external interference in Tanzania domestic affairs following the fallout from the country's recent and high contested election. In a statement released on Sunday, January 11, 2026, China's foreign ministry emphasized that the sovereignty and political independence of Tanzania must be respected by the international community. The diplomatic move comes as the Western nation and international observers raise concern over reported irregularities and the treatment of opposition leaders during the polling process. Beijing's stance reinforced its long-standing policy of non-interference, with officials asserting that the Tanzanian people are capable of resolving their own internal dispute without provocation from Western powers. As the United States and the European Union weigh the possibility of diplomatic sanction or a pause in aid, China has signaled its continued support for the Tanzanian government. Highlighting the importance of maintaining stability in the East African region, the development is being viewed by analysts as a deepening of the geopolitical divides over democratic standards in Africa, with Tanzania serving as the latest focal point for competing global interests. Finally, South African National Congress (ANC) has officially unveiled a high-stake reform manifesto aimed at reversing its declining electoral fortune before the upcoming local government elections. Speaking at a massive rally on Sunday, January 11, 2026, party leadership acknowledged the growing public frustration over systematic corruption, persistent power shortages, and high unemployment rates that have eroded the party's traditional support base. The reform plan, described by party officials as a new contract with people, focuses on internal house cleaning and professionalism of local government service. A major highlight of the strategy is the introduction of stricter vetting process for party candidates to ensure that only individuals with proven integrity and competence are fielded for council position. As a direct response to the step-aside rule controversies and the numerous graft allegations that have plagued the party's local structure in recent years. Beyond international politics, the ACN's new roadmap promises to accelerate the decentralization of the energy grid to allow municipalities more autonomy in solving the land shading crisis that has crippled small businesses. President Cyril Ramaphosa, addressing the crowd, emphasized that the party has heard the message of the people and is committed to renewing process that prioritize service delivery over political patronage. International political analysts suggest that these local polls will serve as a definite litmus test for the ACN's survival as a dominant force, with opposition parties like the Democratic Alliance (DA) and the Economic Freedom Fighters (EFF) gaining grounds in key metropolitan areas. The ACN's ability to implement these reforms effectively before the vote remains the biggest question. The party intends to spend the coming weeks deploying top officials to grassroots communities to demonstrate that the promised change are already underway. This has been the Papyrus Global TV.